What did the weird kid in your school do that you'll never forget? He had a book where he would write in people that wronged him. I got put in for smelling like soap. Ate a sheep eye we were supposed to dissect in science class. Man oh man. This girl decided she wanted to be pregnant. She proceeded to ask probably half the people in our high school if they would impregnate her. And then when that didn't work, she brought a Ziploc bag and asked for guys to jizz in it. Everyone called her sperm bank after that. And I honestly can't remember her real name. He would get almost fully naked to pee in the urinal. Naruto ran everywhere. Told everyone her dad was Harry Potter at age 12. And most memorably, came to school bawling her eyes out because she said she had laid an egg and her parents had eaten it for breakfast. He stabbed someone at a bus stop freshman year of high school. I don't think it was as intense as the rumors about it were, but he definitely had a knife and pulled it. He got expelled and sent to a high school for kids with behavioral mental health issues. Senior year rolls around and he gets sent back to our high school. On the first day of school he shows up in a t-shirt that says Stabby is back. Legendary. Bell rings. Playground doors open. Weird kid walks directly to the center and screams for a full minute. I thought it was weird then, but now I can relate. Ended up in a mental institution because his parents bought him a new mattress and while removing the old one they found multiple mason jars full of blood. No exaggeration, 2 gallons total. There was a police investigation and turned out it was all his blood. His only answer as to why was just in case. Ate styrofoam. And then, visibly, lied about denied it when someone pointed it out. Bits of styrofoam came out of his mouth. Robbed a gas station dressed as a ninja. Armed with a katana. Stole cash from the register. All the cigarettes he could carry. A bunch of lottery tickets. He then fled across state lines with a 17-year-old girl. He was 19. Not a great result for him. Went to a large school. 3,000 students. If anyone said anything to the weird kid that he didn't like, he would stare at you and recite your name and address. A little creepy. There was this huge guy, tall and wide, in our classes. To support his impressive body, he ate a lot. He'd bring an entire roll of cookies, like 20 plus, and stack them on one side of his desk. Then he would take one bite out of cookie number 1 and put it to the other side of his desk. Then he would take one bite out of the next cookie and place that one on top on cookie number 1. He'd go through the whole stack until all cookies were partially eaten and in a neat stack on the other side of his desk. Then would do it again. Take one bite of the top cookie and place that in the original side of the desk. Bite the next cookie, etc. After maybe 15 minutes of biting and stacking, the whole lot was gone. Now we weren't even supposed to eat in class, but he always got away with it somehow. There was this really mentally ducked up kid I could probably write a book about. He went through a phase where he was obsessed with JFK, printed out pictures of him and taped them to everything. His binder, truck, locker, etc. IDK what happened, but later that year all those pictures changed to pictures of Hitler. He referred to this as the time that the devil overtook him with evil. He did the same with William Shatner and a teacher at our school. But the bizarre satanic Hitler obsession takes the cake. He was also banned from the computers because the library lady caught him jerking it to porn. At an all-school assembly during my freshman year, a motivational speaker posed an easy rhetorical question to the crowd, and the weird kid in my grade unnecessarily shouted out the answer. To every bored person's sudden delight. For some reason, trying to maintain his authority, the speaker asked our weird kid, "What's your name, son?" Without pause, weird kid stood up from his chair and loudly proclaimed, "My name is Booger." This announcement was met with raucous applause and laughter from the entire student body. It was gloriously random and weird. From then on the weird kid was known only as Booger in our small town. It fit him better than Sean, and he ducking owned that name until graduation. Ran around the hallways making pterodactyl noises with his arms raised up behind him like he was swimming butterfly. During my 6th grade graduation, our class sang a song. Weird kid is standing next to me on stage and suddenly projectile vomits and some of it landed on my shoes. Impressively, he still kept singing while I stood there wide-mouthed in horror and disbelief. I'll never forget all the gasps from the crowd. So, there was a guy at our school when I was a freshman that everyone called Wolfman, who was weird in all the bad ways. He claimed to have superpowers, teleportation, DBZ-like energy creation and whatnot. All the girls said he just stare at them if they had class with him. He hung around as freshmen and did his best to flirt with the girls. For an example of his flirting, he once told a girl that while astral projecting, he saw her face on Jupiter. Needless to say, girls stayed away from him. He graduated though, and his brother started at the school. Now, Wolfman wasn't a tall guy by any stretch of the imagination. Maybe 5 feet at most. But his brother was a good foot shorter than him. He looked like he belonged in 3rd grade. He never got any taller. It didn't help that he always wore a child's Goosebumps jacket. That made people start calling him Goosebumps. He was even more convinced of his powers than his brother. But at least he was less sexually creepy. But that's all he had going for him. One memorable day I was in math class, and he started shaking violently. People ignored him, so he started flapping his arms around. Wondering if this was an actual seizure, the girl next to him put her hand on him and asked if he's okay. He growled back, "Take your hand off me. This power is too much to contain." She started yelling at him for faking a seizure and he went back to normal death stare, found grumbling about his powers. A few days before a pep assembly, anonymously posted signs all over school that said the cock is coming. Teachers and school administrators were obviously concerned but clueless. Smuggled a live rooster into the assembly and partway through the opening speech at the assembly, whipped it out over his head as it went upbeat. Entire gym full of kids stood up and started chanting cock, cock, cock. Was not seen at school for a few days after that. I'm from a small town. There was this weird kid who was a year older, but he was so weird that even the younger kids would pick on him. I didn't really know him, but I put him in the weird but harmless category. He graduates, and then decides to rob the local Taco Time with a shotgun. Well, it is a small town. The kids working at the Taco Time all know him, and pretty much everybody in the Taco Time also knows him. He got 2 years. Poured his juice on the table at lunch and suction cupped his mouth over it and inhaled it all like a Hoover when you put it directly onto a hard floor. He's a lawyer now. Chew the stuck gums under the tables. Sold a school Chroma book for Robux. 400 Robux for an investment of $0. Stonks. Spilled his fruit juice on his desk. Wiped it with his shirt sleeve, then sucked the juice out of it. Humped my desk for a solid minute while maintaining eye contact with me, and then said, "Thanks," and just walked away. I'm a guy. This was 15 years ago, on my first day at this new school, and I was just eating lunch at my desk, and this dude just walked up and went to town. No context, no introduction, nothing. Didn't even buy me dinner first. Just wham, bam. Thank you, desk. Pulled down his pants in the middle of a public bathroom and span in a circle while spraying piss everywhere and shouting around the world. The weird kid in our school was part of our friend group, so 15 plus years later we still give him it about it. During assembly one afternoon, a few weeks from ball or prom, he went up on stage while our entire year was filing into the auditorium and taking our seats. He was part of the AV club. Surprise. So his responsibility was making sure the microphones worked so nobody questioned why he was up there tinkering with the mic. Anyway, 90% of our year has come in at this point when he starts singing Jumper by Third Eye Blind over a karaoke version of the song he found on LimeWire, and he's changed the "my friend" part of the chorus to the name of the girl he wants to ask out to prom. He gets about halfway through the song before one of the teachers realizes it isn't a joke and gets up on stage to drag him out. Everyone is just sitting there going WTF. Half the kids don't know the song and the other half is wondering why he chose it to ask someone out. Turns out the girl he was asking wasn't even in the auditorium yet, so didn't hear his little number. He got detention for a week for being disruptive, but since then we just call him Jumper as a joke, but then it stuck and I don't think anyone in our friend group has used his name since then. Even during his wedding you could tell who he went to school with since they'd ask where Jumper or Big J was. Was in the band during some downtime. Some guy kicks off his shoes and socks and bites the ends of his toenails off. Most of the class casually migrated towards the other side of the room. cut his own hair while in class, mentioned that he would conquer the world with a revolver, ended up setting fire to his house and was sent to a mental asylum. Pretty mild stuff. The albino kid in school. He would take off running down the hallway with one hand straight out in front of him and yell, "White lightning." He was weird but everyone liked him. We were getting DNA samples in biology. Most of the class used spit but he tried to squeeze milk out of his nipples. Milk. After that didn't work out, he attempted to get pimple fluid from his pimple. When the teacher noticed and questioned, he answered, "I got some out just this morning." This was when we were 14-15. I don't know. I am pretty sure I was the weird kid. Weird kid. Dan was obsessed with cute girl, Casey, for several years. She rejected him for several years. On the bus to a field trip I sat next to him and he was drawing. I glanced over and he was drawing Casey falling off a cliff onto a patch of spikes below. Years later in middle school he also got super mad and threw a desk across the room in English. Not a small desk either. One of those that's a desk chair attached hybrid. Just ducking, he yeeted it across the room. Was ducking terrified. There's a litany of things he did, but those stand out to me. Edit cause I saw another commenter mention something similar. He also jerked off under a desk in detention once. My brother is a high school teacher and he once texted me that he caught a kid cutting his pubic hair in class. Another kid, not even from his class, randomly ran into the classroom, took some binders out of a bookcase and started jumping up and down on them. Then he ran out of the classroom again. He stabbed me with a number 2 pencil in my collarbone area. I went to the hospital but they said I was fine. My stepdad said I would do anything to get out of school. Duck both of those guys. One time some kid smeared it on the walls in the restroom but no one ever found out who did it. P.S. For those of you who assume it was me, it would not be possible since I stopped using school restrooms to take a shit since 4th grade and this happened 2 years ago when I was in 7th grade. I don't even know how the inside of that restroom looks like. I was in economics class and this quiet Asian kid was on his laptop. The head of the school's IT storms into the classroom and starts yelling at him along the lines of "You've ducked the whole network." Drags him out of the class and we never saw the kid again. Sodomized a duck. Allegedly. Didn't see him after that if I'm remembering it correctly. He was a genius. All top scores. One day he called a friend of mine and said, "Hey, what are you doing this afternoon? Do you want to come here so we design a time travel machine?" Who knows when he is now. This is going to sound ridiculous but during my senior year of high school someone took a huge, and I mean inhumanly huge, it in one of the girls' bathroom toilets that was far too big to be flushed away. Some kid mentioned seeing it and in no time somehow the entire school was made aware and gathered around the bathroom trying to get a look at this monstrosity. Picture 50+ high school kids skipping classes just to try to squeeze into a small women's room to stare in awe at an infamous it. The crowd got so big and unruly that the administration finally caught on and banned people from that particular hallway for the rest of the day under threat of suspension. I like to believe that all of us were that weird kid on that day. She barked at people and tried to scratch behind her ears with her foot. AMD sniffed people's butts at recess. She was 14. Apparently he put a teaspoon up his ass in assembly. He gave me a handful of blue pop rocks. He was actually really sweet. I remember once in high school we were on a school camp which included some low-level spelunking. About 60 of us had to squeeze single file on our hands and knees through a narrow part of the cave which was about 100 meters long. There was a small section about halfway along which opened up a bit to allow 2 people to sit shoulder to shoulder. Anyway, weird kid got to this section and decided he really needed to poop. Not sure what he had been eating, but it was a runny one. He was at the front of the column so we all had the pleasure of crawling through the mess he made, because we'd come too far to turn back. Combine that with poor lighting and poor ventilation and we had a real mess on our hands. I'm not sure if he done this with anyone else but he drew a picture of SpongeBob and Charizard brutally killing me and my friend and then willingly showed it to us. I couldn't help but laugh but it was actually very well drawn. I like that kid. Kidnapped a kindergarten from the bus stop and brought her to school claiming it was her daughter. Shook a baby and ended up in prison. He regularly threw chairs around the classroom, and one time he even held a pair of scissors to a teacher's throat. That was in primary school. He was seriously troubled but seems okay now. His desk was in front of mine in Japanese class. He would pop his back acne and eat the puss when he was bored. It was absolutely horrendous and people were pretty mean to him. But in hindsight his mom used to drop him off and handles of vodka and or beer cans would fall out of the car when he got out. He was probably just going through it, but in a strange way. Pissed his pants on the last day. College. Halloween party. Weird quiet kid shows up in regular clothes, but wearing a giant strap-on with a doll baby attached to it in a certain way. He went as a baby rapist. He was generally very weird and erratic. One day he extracted a huge slimy booger out of his nose, turned around to me and a friend and told us full of glee, "Guys, look." Then he stuffed it back into his nose. One day I asked him why he was so weird and he told me with the straightest face, "The jester's cap affords one many liberties." So I don't know if he was just weird or a secret genius. Maybe a bit of both. Not weird kid, but kids. Apparently these three really odd guys went camping together. This is in the flip phone days. Two of them decided to jerk off onto one guy's phone and closed the flip phone. Refused to say what happened after that. When I brought it up with him he said I was number one on his hit list. Said he was going to get a bazooka when we joined the military and come blow me up. They all ducked in the woods apparently but never fully confirmed. Had a container of red Kool-Aid powder in his desk and he would open it and eat it by the handful when he would get bored, usually an hour after lunch. One time someone broke in at night and ate it on the table of one class. It stank there for months literally and the room wasn't used anymore. After one of my female friends rejected his advances he proceeded to jump off of his roof, twice, and broke both of his arms. Second thing, he made a wooden weed pipe in wood shop and then tried to smoke out of it in class. Another weird kid, who I might mention probably had a cognitive disability, so I don't want to be mean, hid under a bridge in town and drank multiple bottles of Pepto-Bismol, and then went to school acting like he was drunk. He attempted to get people to drink some with him, and then went back to the bridge and tried to light stuff on fire until the police arrived. Another one, a true Looney Tune of a guy, shortly after high school was caught with a large amount of guns in his trunk, rifles, pistols and all that, and went to prison jail over a multitude of crimes. Don't even think he was in a gang, just pure insanity drove him to do insane things. Okay, so one kid got dared to put a protractor in his mouth and he did it curved side first, so naturally it then got stuck and he got sent out of class, had to go to the school office. The same kid got dared to shoot a staple gun at himself, so he went ahead and staple gunned his arm and had to be taken to one to get stitches. There were loads of other things he did that I can't remember now, but it got to the point that if someone did something totally stupid and or dangerous, kids in our year began to refer to it as pulling a Hudson after him. Stole a car, crashed it, lost both his legs at 17. A few years later he did it again, but this time he stabbed one of the Good Samaritans who tried to help him, and shot at another one. He then led the police on an 8-hour manhunt through tropical jungle by detaching his prosthetics and hiding under the leaves and mud, and using a makeshift raft to escape downriver under the cover of nightfall. The newspaper the next day read armed and legless. Emptied a year's worth of accumulated semen in his locker on the last day. Made his own religion. Went through the paperwork and everything for recognition. Honestly, this is better than 98% of other organized religions. In 6th grade the weird kid climbed up a tree and threatened to jump down. No teacher was nearby and all children around, me included, were like, sure, go ahead. Or what do you even want achieved by that? He was just 3. Maybe 4 meters above the ground, so no one really expected a more serious injury. After the students lost interest in him and some hesitation on his side, he climbed back down, so no big deal, right? Wrong. Fast forward 5 years. Same guys climbs on top of a 12 stories building and this time actually jumps. I always felt a bit guilty, as our reaction when he climbed up that tree might have encouraged him to do it properly this time. The guy actually survives by hitting the electricity cables from the tram, which softens his fall, but is in coma for nearly a year with multiple surgeries until he finally wakes up. but will be impaired for the rest of his life. He wrote in my yearbook when I was 6 years old. I went into a cornfield. I didn't realize it was a maze. I was stuck for several days without food or water. When they found me, the doctors said I'd never be the same. Good luck in college. Anybody check this thread to see if you were the weird kid in the stories? Read a poem he wrote about abuse from the perspective of the rapist at assembly. A teacher sprinted up to stop him at the line, then I pulled her deeper into the alley. Looking back, it's pretty clear the guy was on the spectrum, but autism wasn't really a thing back then, especially where I grew up. I hope he's doing well now. Andrew Hooker made an album of electronica called Hook Anthems, and each one was a soundtrack for different mundane tasks of his life. He sold only one copy to a maths teacher, and it's also one of my life regrets that I didn't buy one too. Guy Jr. I had an unsightly amount of earwax and was obsessed with James Bond, who he claimed to be his uncle. He would loudly proclaim that James Bond will kick your ass to anyone who questioned his affiliation with James Bond, made fun of James Bond in any fashion, or denounced James Bond skills. He would literally get into fistfights to protect the honor of James Bond. There was also a girl in my elementary school who never wore shoes and was known for her impressive farting skills. I'll never forget the day when our class was sitting on the library floor during a lecture by the librarian how to handle read fold a newspaper. The 90s were weird. It could not have been more boring when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the girl unleashed a massive fart that kept going and going, and kept getting louder and louder to the point that the entire class was in full-blown hysterics while the fart continued to rage on. The hero we needed that day. Legend. I had an autistic friend, and he was afraid of a particular twin. He was minding his own business in the corridors, and each twin was walking towards each other at different ends of the corridor, with him in between. Frightened, he did what no one would expect: jump out the window. He was on the 3rd floor. Thankfully, he wasn't hurt that bad. When my teacher asked him why he did that, he said my life was under grave danger, and I only did what was imperative to be done. To this day, I don't know why he was afraid of them. Put a pig fetus head on the English teacher's car antenna.